The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, unassuming yet heavy with purpose. Dr. Elias Carter, a scholar of ancient texts and a lifelong seeker of spiritual truths, found it on his desk, tucked between a stack of dusty tomes and a half-empty coffee mug. The return address was blank, but the handwriting was deliberate, sharp, angular, and almost otherworldly. He opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of parchment. The words were written in deep black ink, and they seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. Enoch holds the key to ascension, but his book was silenced. Are you ready to uncover the mystery? Elias felt a chill crawl up his spine. Enoch. The name echoed in his mind like a forgotten melody. He knew the biblical Enoch, the man who walked with God and was taken to heaven without dying. But this felt different. It felt like a summons. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the letter. Why now? Why him? For years, Elias had studied the Gnostic texts, the hidden Gospels, the fragments of wisdom that the early church had deemed too dangerous to preserve. He'd always been drawn to the forbidden, the obscure, the truths that lay just beyond the veil of mainstream understanding. And now, it seemed, the veil was calling him. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He paced his study, surrounded by bookshelves that groaned under the weight of ancient knowledge. His mind raced. The Book of Enoch. He'd heard whispers of it, of course. A text so profound, so controversial, that it had been erased from the Bible, relegated to the shadows of history. But why? What secrets did it hold? By dawn, he had made his decision. He would find the Book of Enoch, not just as an academic exercise, but as a personal quest. Something about that letter had stirred a part of him he thought long buried, a hunger for truth, for understanding, for something greater than himself. His first stop was the university library. He spent hours poring over old manuscripts, cross-referencing historical accounts, and piecing together the fragmented history of the Book of Enoch. He learned that it had once been revered, even quoted in the New Testament's Epistle of Jude. But by the 4th century, it had vanished from the canon, deemed too radical, too dangerous. As he read, Elias began to see patterns. The Book of Enoch spoke of fallen angels, of giants who walked the earth, of visions of heaven and hell that defied conventional understanding. It was a text that challenged the very foundations of religious orthodoxy, offering a glimpse into a world far more complex, far more mysterious, than the one most people accepted as reality. But it was more than that. The Book of Enoch was a call to awakening. It spoke of a direct connection to the divine, of knowledge that could transform the soul. And that, Elias realized, was why it had been silenced. It wasn't just a book. It was a threat. By the end of the day, Elias was exhausted but exhilarated. He had found his purpose. The letter had been right. Enoch did hold the key, and Elias was going to find it. As he left the library, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the campus. Elias paused, looking up at the sky. For a moment, he thought he saw something, a flicker of light, a movement that wasn't quite natural. He shook his head, smiling faintly. The journey had begun. The next morning, Elias found himself in the rare manuscripts section of university archives. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and dust, and the dim lighting gave the room an almost sacred feel. He had requested access to a collection of early Christian texts, hoping to find traces of the Book of Enoch. The archivist, a frail woman with sharp eyes, handed him a fragile codex. "This is one of the oldest copies we have," she said. "It's not the Book of Enoch itself, but it references it. Be careful, it's irreplaceable." Elias nodded, handling the manuscript with reverence. As he flipped through the brittle pages, his heart quickened. There it was, a passage discussing Enoch's visions, his journey through the heavens, and his warnings of a coming judgment. The text was cryptic, filled with symbolism that hinted at a deeper truth. But what struck Elias most was the tone of the author, a mix of awe and fear. It was as if the writer knew they were treading on dangerous ground, revealing secrets that had been meant to stay hidden. Elias spent hours transcribing the passage, his mind racing with questions. Why had the early church been so afraid of this book? What was it about Enoch's visions that threatened the established order? That evening, he met with Dr. Miriam Hayes, a colleague who specialized in Gnostic studies. Over cups of steaming tea, they discussed the Book of Enoch and its place in early Christian thought. The church didn't just exclude it because it was controversial, Miriam said, her voice low and intense. They excluded it because it offered a path to spiritual knowledge that didn't require intermediaries. Enoch's direct connection to the divine, his gnosis, was a threat to their authority. Elias leaned forward, intrigued. So it wasn't just about theology. It was about power. Miriam nodded. Exactly. The Book of Enoch was a reminder that the divine is within everyone, that we don't need priests or institutions to access it. And that's a dangerous idea for those who want to control the narrative. As Elias left Miriam's office, he felt a growing sense of urgency. The Book of Enoch wasn't just an ancient text. It was a key to understanding the true nature of spirituality, a guide to transcending the illusions of the material world. And it had been hidden away, buried beneath centuries of dogma and fear. But Elias was determined to uncover it. Over the next few days, he delved deeper into his research, piecing together fragments of the Book of Enoch from various sources. He learned about the Watchers, the fallen angels who had descended to earth, taking human wives and fathering the Nephilim, a race of giants. He read about Enoch's journey through the heavens, where he was shown the secrets of creation and the fate of humanity. Each revelation was more astonishing than the last. The Book of Enoch wasn't just a story. It was a map, a guide to understanding the cosmos and our place within it. But there was one question that haunted Elias. Why had Enoch been chosen? What made him different? The answer came to him in a dream. He saw Enoch standing on a mountaintop, his face radiant with light. Around him swirled visions of angels, stars, and vast, incomprehensible realms. And then Enoch spoke, his voice echoing in Elias's mind. The path is open to all who seek it, but few have the courage to walk it. Elias woke with a start, his heart pounding. The dream felt more real than anything he had ever experienced, as if Enoch himself had reached across time to deliver a message. The next morning, Elias knew what he had to do. He would find a complete copy of the Book of Enoch, no matter where it took him. The journey was no longer just about uncovering the past. It was about discovering the truth within himself. Elias's search led him to a small, secluded monastery in the mountains of Turkey. The monastery was said to house one of the oldest surviving copies of the Book of Enoch, guarded by a sect of monks who had preserved it for centuries. The journey was arduous, hours of winding roads, followed by a steep climb on foot, but Elias felt a strange pull, as if the book itself was calling him. When he arrived, the monastery was shrouded in mist, its ancient stone walls blending into the rugged landscape. An elderly monk greeted him at the gate, his eyes sharp and knowing. "You seek the Book of Enoch," the monk said, not as a question, but as a statement. Elias nodded, too awed to speak. The monk led him through dimly lit corridors, past frescoes of angels and saints, until they reached a small, windowless chamber. In the center of the room, on a stone pedestal, lay a weathered manuscript. Its pages were yellowed with age, but the ink was still vivid, as if it had been written yesterday. "This is it," the monk said, "the Book of Enoch. But be warned, it is not just a text. It is a mirror. It will show you what you are ready to see." Elias approached the manuscript with trembling hands. As he opened it, a wave of energy seemed to emanate from the pages, filling the room with a soft, golden light. He began to read, and the words came alive in his mind, painting vivid images of Enoch's visions. He saw the Watchers, the fallen angels who had defied the divine order, their beauty twisted by pride and desire. He saw the Nephilim, their towering forms casting shadows over the earth, spreading chaos and destruction. And he saw Enoch ascending through the heavens, guided by angels, his soul alight with divine knowledge. But as Elias read deeper, he began to understand that these were not just stories, they were allegories, symbols of a deeper truth. The Watchers represented the descent of the divine into the material world, the fragmentation of the soul into the illusions of ego and desire. The Nephilim were the manifestations of this fall, the distortions of our true nature. And Enoch. Enoch was the archetype of the awakened soul, the one who had transcended the illusions and returned to the source. Elias felt a profound shift within himself, as if the book was unlocking something buried deep in his psyche. He began to see his own life as a reflection of Enoch's journey, the struggles, the doubts, the moments of clarity. He realized that the path to gnosis, to direct knowledge of the divine, was not about escaping the world, but about seeing through its illusions. The monk watched him silently, a faint smile on his lips. When Elias finally looked up, his eyes were filled with tears. "Do you understand now?" the monk asked. Elias nodded. "It's not just about Enoch. It's about all of us. The book is a guide, a map for the soul's journey back to the divine." The monk placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember, the truth is not found in the words, but in the spaces between them. The Book of Enoch is a key, but the door is within you." Elias spent the next few days at the monastery, studying the manuscript and meditating on its teachings. He felt a sense of peace he had never known before, as if he had finally found the answers he had been searching for. But as he prepared to leave, the monk gave him one final warning. "The knowledge you carry is powerful, but it is also dangerous. There are those who will seek to silence you, just as they silenced Enoch. Be careful." Elias nodded, his resolve firm. He knew the risks, but he also knew that he couldn't turn back. The truth was too important, too transformative. As he descended the mountain, the manuscript tucked safely in his bag, Elias felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He was no longer just a scholar. He was a seeker, a messenger, a part of something much greater than himself. The journey was far from over. Elias returned to the university with the manuscript, his mind buzzing with revelations. He knew he had to share what he had learned, but he also remembered the monk's warning. The knowledge of the Book of Enoch was dangerous, and there were those who would do anything to keep it buried. At first, everything seemed normal. He gave a lecture on his findings, carefully framing the Book of Enoch as a historical artifact rather than a spiritual guide. The audience was captivated, but Elias noticed a few faces in the crowd that made him uneasy. Men in dark suits, their expressions unreadable, their eyes fixed on him with an intensity that felt almost predatory. After the lecture, one of them approached him. "Dr. Carter," the man said, his voice smooth but cold, "your work on the Book of Enoch is fascinating. We'd like to discuss it further, in private." Elias hesitated. There was something about the man's demeanor that set off alarm bells in his mind. "Who are you?" he asked. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just say we're interested in preserving the integrity of historical narratives. Some truths are better left in the past." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. He politely declined the invitation, but as he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. His office was ransacked, though nothing was taken. His emails were hacked, and he received anonymous messages warning him to stop digging. Even his colleagues seemed distant, as if they had been warned to stay away from him. Elias knew he was being targeted, but he refused to back down. The Book of Enoch had awakened something in him, a fire, a determination to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. One night, as he was working late in his office, the power went out. The room was plunged into darkness, and Elias heard the sound of footsteps approaching. He grabbed the manuscript and hid it in his bag, his heart pounding. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. It was the man from the lecture, his face illuminated by the glow of a flashlight. "Dr. Carter," he said, his voice calm but menacing, "we warned you. The Book of Enoch is not meant for the world. It's too dangerous." Elias stood his ground, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Dangerous for who? For those who want to control what people think. For those who are afraid of the truth." The man's expression hardened. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just about power. It's about protecting people from knowledge they're not ready for. Elias shook his head. Everyone has the right to seek the truth. You can't keep it hidden forever. The man stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. We can try. For a moment, the two men stood in silence, the tension thick in the air. Then, without warning, Elias bolted for the door. He ran down the darkened hallway, his footsteps echoing in the empty building. He didn't stop until he was outside, the cold night air sharp in his lungs. He knew he couldn't stay in the city. They would find him again. He needed to disappear, to find a safe place where he could continue his work. As he drove away, his mind raced. Who were these people? What were they so afraid of? And why were they willing to go to such lengths to silence him? The answers, he realized, were in the Book of Enoch itself. Elias drove through the night, the manuscript safely tucked in his bag. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to get as far away as possible. The encounter in his office had shaken him, but it had also solidified his resolve. The Book of Enoch was more than just a text. It was a catalyst, a spark that could ignite a spiritual awakening in those who were ready. As dawn broke, he found himself in a remote village nestled in the mountains. The air was crisp and clean, and the people greeted him with quiet curiosity. He rented a small cabin on the edge of the forest, a place where he could work in peace. For weeks, Elias immersed himself in the manuscript, decoding its symbols and meditating on its teachings. He began to see patterns, connections that transcended time and space. The Book of Enoch wasn't just a historical document. It was a living, breathing guide to the soul's journey. One night, as he sat by the fire, he had a vision. He saw Enoch standing before him, his face radiant with light. Around him swirled images of the heavens, the earth, and the vast, interconnected web of existence. "You have found the key," Enoch said, his voice echoing in Elias's mind. "But the door is within you. Open it, and you will see the truth." Elias closed his eyes, focusing on the words. He felt a surge of energy, a wave of light that seemed to flow through his entire being. In that moment, he understood. The Book of Enoch wasn't just about Enoch's journey. It was about the journey of every soul, the path from ignorance to enlightenment, from separation to unity. He saw the Watchers not as fallen angels, but as aspects of the human psyche, the parts of us that are trapped in illusion and desire. The Nephilim were the distortions we create when we lose sight of our true nature. And Enoch was the awakened soul, the part of us that remembers its divine origin. Tears streamed down Elias's face as the vision faded. He felt a profound sense of peace, as if he had finally come home. The next morning, he began to write. He poured everything he had learned into a book, weaving together the teachings of the Book of Enoch with his own insights and experiences. He knew it wouldn't be easy to share this knowledge with the world, but he also knew it was his purpose. As he worked, he felt a presence beside him, a warmth that filled the room. He knew it was Enoch, guiding him, supporting him. When the book was finished, Elias sent it to a publisher, along with a letter explaining its significance. He knew it would attract controversy, even danger, but he also knew it was necessary. The world was ready for the truth, even if it didn't know it yet. In the months that followed, Elias's book became a sensation, sparking debates and discussions around the world. Some dismissed it as heresy, while others embraced it as a revelation. But for those who were ready, it was a key, a guide to the spiritual awakening that was already unfolding. Elias himself became a symbol of the seeker, the one who dared to question, to explore, to uncover the hidden truths of existence. He knew his journey wasn't over. There was still so much to learn, so much to discover. But for now, he was at peace. He had found the truth, not just in the Book of Enoch, but within himself. And that, he realized, was the greatest mystery of all. Years later, Elias returned to the monastery in Turkey. The elderly monk greeted him with a smile, as if he had been expecting him. "You've done well," the monk said. "The truth is spreading." Elias nodded, his heart full. "But there's still so much to do." The monk placed a hand on his shoulder. The journey never ends, but you've taken the first step, and that is enough. As Elias stood on the mountaintop, looking out at the vast, endless sky, he felt a sense of connection, of unity with all that is. He knew the path ahead would be challenging, but he also knew he wasn't alone. The Book of Enoch had awakened him, and now it was his turn to awaken others. The journey had only just begun,